Portlanders haven't always had the best relationships with presidents, so how did we get here? Let's go back, say, 50 years, to the Nixon administration. The president was planning a visit to Portland that was expected to draw protests. So, to lure young anti-war demonstrators out of the city, the state put on a music festival out in Clackamas County called Vortex One. It remains the only state-sponsored rock festival in U.S. history. When President Jimmy Carter visited the Rose City in 1978, he was greeted by anti-nuclear protesters. President Ronald Reagan got an earful from demonstrators when he made a campaign stop here in 1984. And a member of George H.W. Bush's administration famously dubbed Portland Little Beirut because of the massive protests against the president whenever he came to town in the early 90s. People threw eggs, they set bonfires, and burned flags. His son got similar treatment, especially during the Iraq War, with huge crowds gathered in the streets on the night of his second inauguration. When President Obama spoke at the Oregon Convention Center in 2012, demonstrators gathered outside, calling for legalized marijuana and stricter gun laws. That same year, protesters locked themselves inside his Southeast Portland election headquarters, demanding the release of WikiLeaks whistleblower Chelsea Manning. And down in Roseburg, gun rights activists protested his visit after the Umpqua Community College shooting in 2015. A year later, when President Trump was elected, protesters filled the streets for weeks, and they turned out again when he was inaugurated. Since then, President Trump has strongly criticized the city of Portland and Mayor Ted Wheeler, who has fired right back at him over our sanctuary city status and the ongoing clashes between protesters and police. Last month, a caravan of Trump supporters and right-wing groups fought with left-wing protesters in the streets, ending in a deadly shooting. Now, the Trump administration has designated Portland an anarchist jurisdiction, threatening to withhold federal funding from the city. And that's how we got here.